Ever feel like everything's getting more expensive? Groceries, rent, even breathing. And let's not forget car insurance. It just keeps creeping up. But here's the thing. Insurify makes one part of life easier. It's an insurance comparison site that finds real-time quotes from dozens of top insurers. Insurance companies compete for your business, driving down prices. It's like having a friend who knows all the best deals, but without the smug grin. You could save as much as $1,025 a year, and you might even cut your bill in half. The best part, it's all online. No phone calls, no spam, no nonsense. You can be covered in as little as 10 minutes, and with an excellent star rating on Trustpilot, saving feels less impossible. So why not give it a shot? Visit Insurify.com and see how much you can save. That's INSURIFY.com. Average potential savings based on initial quotes received by 183,234 customers seeking insurance through Insurify. Actual savings may vary depending on state of residence, individual circumstances, coverage selections, and insurance provider. Savings results are not guaranteed. As you've probably heard by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code The Athletic. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first bet on any game and claim your voucher for a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager.
This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
The Athletic.
As usual, Ducati has taken the cream of MotoGP media, including the race's own Simon Patterson, to a ski resort to launch its 2025 MotoGP season. But the new element is the rider on one of the bikes, Marc Marquez, in full factory Lenovo-branded Ducati red for the first time, alongside Pecco Bagnaia on stage. And everyone being very mild-mannered about it at this point. Can that last? This is the Race MotoGP Podcast. I'm Matt Beer. With me are Simon, who's kind of in between events in Ducati's 3-day skiing and bikes launch extravaganza right now, and Val Khorounzhiy. Simon, give listeners a quick taste of how Ducati goes about launching a season, because it's not quite the same way as everyone else does, is it?
No, it's not. So Sunday night was everyone arriving to the hotel, big dinner with about 40 or 50 journalists. Monday morning, down into the little village below us, which is one of Italy's premier ski resorts. We did the presentation in a big amphitheatre that probably seated about 500 people, announced the bikes, went to collect our free ski rental straight afterwards, came back to the hotel while the riders have been down in town doing a public unveiling of the bike. And in about an hour's time, we jump in the gondola to one of the ski chalets up in the mountains for dinner. Then tomorrow morning, we're all going skiing, which culminates in a ski race that gets insanely competitive between not some of the people you'd expect. Put it this way, this year's a little bit of an open race compared to past years because long-time team boss Paolo Ciabatti is no longer part of the MotoGP squad, so he's not here. He was like the favourite going into it. Then tomorrow afternoon, it's another massive dinner in the mountains, this time by snowmobile. And then they give us another day of skiing on Wednesday and we head home. It's wild. It's just mad. No one else does team launches like Ducati do these days in MotoGP.
And you've done some skiing practice for this year, haven't you? So you can properly get involved. So if by the time listeners hear this, we're reading about Marc Marquez having a broken leg from a collision with a journalist, could be something to do with you.
That's entirely no. That's not fair. Actually, I won't be going fast enough to present a hazard to Marc Marquez. I'm going to be the person that falls over on their own without anyone else near them. So,
do we think Marc is quicker leaning left on the skis than leaning right?
Surely.
It's got to be, right?
Right. Right.
Let's get to the actual non-skiing part of the launch. Obviously, all the attention about this partnership has been the potential tension between Marquez and Bagnaia as a rider who is the greatest of his generation, which may or may not be a generation that's now finished, comes into the town of the rider who's been the benchmark for the last few years, even though that rider has not won the championship last season. It's fair to say, though, that these two were not in kind of Valentino Rossi, Jorge Lorenzo mode at the launch, were they? And I wasn't surprised by that. This feels like a partnership where it's going to kick off, but it's going to kick off when they hit each other on track, not through kind of barbed comments and raised eyebrows at a launch event.
I mean, I've insisted for a long time that I don't think that the drama that everyone wants there to be there is going to be there. It's much more calm than that. It's a much more sedate set of affairs. And today, watching the two guys kind of interact together, it's kind of the first time we've seen them interacting, just the two of them outside of the whole MotoGP bubble with the whole paddock. They look as friendly as they always have. They're relaxed. They're chilled. There's a potential for them to fall out, but it is not going to happen at any point prior to the two of them actually physically making contact on track.
Let's hear how Marquez regards his partnership with Bagnaia. He was not extremely generous as such, because Bagnaia is a double world champion, but Marquez is clearly going into this relationship determined to make sure Bagnaia knows he has his respect, and the team knows that Marquez is aiming for harmony. So starting off with a Dani Pedrosa comparison.
The teammate I learned more was Dani Pedrosa. That was a masterclass every session, and especially when you arrive in MotoGP and you have a teammate as Dani Pedrosa. It was amazing to understand. There I learned a lot. Of course, now it's not the same situation, but a bit similar. I arrive in a box where is a rider that win 2 world championships there, where he's super fast, where only ride Ducati, so he know very well how to manage, how to fix every problem, and as we see Pecco many times on Friday, is far, but then from one practice to another one is the fastest one on the racetrack. So I will try to learn about him, because he has a lot of experience with Ducati bike. Of course, my teammate will be the one that finished second or first last 4 years. So he's super strong, and the normal thing is that he will be in front, especially on the fair races. But as I said last year, he won 11 races. He did some mistakes, but if you don't take a risk, you don't win 11 races. So in the end, it's always a compromise. But I will try to as I said, to learn from him, to try to understand how I can find the best level with my riding style inside the Ducati Lenovo team, and from that point, let's see. But try to be on that top 3 in the end of the championship will be the main target. Of course, we will try to keep the focus on that title, but main target is top 3.
Val, it's all very well Mark saying my aim must be top 3 in the championship, but top 3 in a 2-horse race is a little bit too mild for a prediction at the start of the year, surely.
Yeah, I don't really believe that, and I would like to ask specifically if your aim is top 3 and you envision yourself finishing potentially third, even if I think he clarified it to Spanish media as being top 3 means you've been in the title battle. I don't think that's always true. I don't think that's true every year, but let's
it's not
assume
true most
that it
years, is it?
Yeah. But I'd like to know who he envisions as being second in that case, because I don't know. I can't really think of an acceptable name to finish second that Mark could finish third to and go, well, that's been a good season. But equally, I don't think there's a lot of ways to read into that. I don't think it's mind games or anything. I think that's super boring. I think it's just Marc continuing with his current trajectory of trying to take as much pressure off himself as possible, because just he doesn't need it anymore. I guess he doesn't. I don't think he feels it very much anymore, and for better and for worse. And we'll see how that changes once he gets rolling into the season. And he also did mention that he expects Bagnaia to get out of the blocks quicker. And I wonder what that's connected to, because I don't think the team adaptation will be particularly all that complicated. I mean, yeah, new crew chief, all that, but it's a works team. It's designed to get the best out of you, I think, right away. The 2-spec jump in bike can be a little complicated, but it's still nothing like the Honda to Ducati jump, and that seemed to go fine last season. I wonder if that's because he doesn't fancy Buriram and Qatar as his two super. Is Qatar at the start of the season this season?
It's like round 4, so
it's round 4. Yeah.
Argentina second after Thailand. It's very confusing calendar.
I don't think he fancies Pecco to beat him in Argentina, does he? Or Kota? I mean, surely not. So I don't know. I think he's just being coy for the sake of being coy.
I do kind of see his point about it being logical to assume Pecco will start the season stronger. I get that it's another Ducati. It's the best bike on the grid. He's used to a factory team environment. But it is literally the place that Bagnaia has been for the last half a decade. And if there's any advantage to incumbency, Bagnaia will have that early on. And like you say, it's not the calendar starts on a bunch of super Marquez-y tracks. That said, Simon, this is Marc Marquez, and as soon as the idea of Marc Marquez being on a Ducati at all cropped up at the end of 2023, you were predicting Marc Marquez would instantly be champion again, and I feel like your inkling was still he'll be champion this year. Certainly now he's on the works bike. So, okay, everyone's being friendly, coy, and hedging their bets and sensible today, but is this going to be a Marquez championship? Is all the kind of generous talk about each other going to look silly in 3 months' time when Marc's running away with it, having made this team his own at Pecco's expense?
It's not going to be quite that straightforward, but that is still the trajectory I see this taking. That's still the angle that I see here. We know that all of that old Marquez spark, it looks like is still there. What we saw at the end of last season, at the end of 24, whenever things were starting to come together and it was all working and the bike was a bit better, and it was in a bike that we knew was at a significant disadvantage to everybody. And I think with one rider out of the way in the form of Martin, and with this kind of 2-man showdown, I mean, Marc is good at races, at everything, whenever it's that kind of man-on-man.
Yeah.
Whenever he has one person to beat, he can beat them very, very well. And I just can't really see it going any other way.
I wouldn't say that Bagnaia was exactly sceptical about his own chances today at the launch, but Bagnaia certainly sounded more certain of Marquez's title bid than Marquez himself did. Here's what Pecco said when Simon asked him about his new teammate, effectively.
Pecco, I know that Marc says that his target for this year is top 3 in the championship, but do you think it is inevitable that it's going to be him battling you for the title?
I think when you are wearing the red jersey, the red leather, he knows that he's here
you need to fight for the challenge.
Yeah.
If not, another one will take your back.
And I think it's difficult to know every season the rival who will be. It's difficult to name one, but I think for the potential of the bike, for what we saw last year, I think Marc will be one of the hardest. Absolutely, will be the main contender because he has one more year of experience with our bike. The new bike absolutely will suit better because it's an improvement compare what he was riding last year, and he was already doing an amazing job. He did many podiums. He won 3 races, so I think will be the main contender. And we have to see during the season who will be who are the others. But if I have to look and focus on the championship and imagine on the championship, I think me and him could be the two fighting, and then could be at someone else. But the main two, I think, are us.
Simon, what do you make of how Pecco handled that question?
I think that pretty much the way I kind of expected him to. It wasn't a huge surprise that he kind of admitted. Largely because, right, as is always the case in these things, it's easier for a rider to admit that others are going to fight for a championship than it is for themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
By the way, let me come in on this. Why?
I know.
That's the part that irritates me to no end,
exactly.
Right? We're not going to clown you if at the end of the season, early on, you said you were a title contender and it didn't happen. Yeah. That's fine. People get things wrong sometimes. It's good to shoot for the stars. It's somehow, I think, the world of modern PR and like Twitter cards being made of unfortunate quotes that come back to bite people later in has completely removed any possibility of sports people talking about the potential for future success or discuss a championship in the middle of a championship. I mean, God forbid we said anything other than a race at a time, right? Anyway, that's completely unrelated to this.
It's why it was quite refreshing when we did that podcast at the end of last season with Augusto Fernandez, and he was like, yeah, you know what, I start every weekend thinking I'm going to win the race.
Oh,
that is the correct mentality for a MotoGP rider to have.
Yeah,
that is, yeah. So I have absolutely no problem with anyone saying, yes, I'm going to win this championship, or at the very least, I'm going to fight for it right until the end of the year. And, you know, realistically, if Mark thinks anything else, the only person he's kidding is himself, because we all know he's going to be at least fighting for it. He's going to be there.
If he thinks otherwise, then Ducati has made a mistake.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If he thinks he's not ready to fight for a championship
essentially
on a factory
admitted.
Ducati,
yeah.
There's another guy that Ducati just discarded in favor of you.
There's two other guys
who has proven.
And one of them has a number one plate and a Aprilia.
Yeah. One guy who is very demonstrably, factually proven that if you give him a factory spec Ducati, he can win a MotoGP World Championship. So as the rider they chose over that rider, you got to fight for the championship, brother. You have to. And he said he plans to, but also your target for the season can't be top 3. It has to be number 1.
One thing. So today's format was a little bit different from the usual media scrum, whereas it was kind of a more formal press conference setting. I mean, like, one thing I would have absolutely have tried to follow up and ask if that had been a normal press conference. Whenever he asked himself, or whenever he said that his goal was top 3, was who on earth is going to be the other one?
Yeah,
like who do you think is going to beat one of you two to second? I get saying maybe I'm not going to beat Pecco for the championship, but like, come on, man. You're going to be top 2 here.
Well, this is it. Like that interjection that Mark did into Pecco's answer, they're saying, well, obviously I'd basically be sacked if I'm not fighting for the title here. If either of these guys are third in 2025, unless we get a massive shock when the bikes hit the track next month, if either of these two guys are third, Ducati really shouldn't have signed them. /kept them. And when it comes
or if Digia has been on one hell of a doping regimen while away. Like, just absolutely loading up on every bit of like HGH, testosterone, whatever.
I think Digia's just going to be happy to turn up with 2 shoulders, let alone 2 giant shoulders.
Well, one of them's going to be bionic.
The bar is low.
Oh dear.
This is a disclaimer. This is not a suggestion that Digia dopes or does drugs. Obviously not. Just, for legally speaking, that's not what I'm saying.
No, absolutely. But it is a fair point that the last year, the factory Ducati team was upstaged by someone on the same spec of Ducati with a satellite team. The person who has the same spec of Ducati this year is Fabio Di Giannantonio at VR46. Digia's rise from nearly just dropping off the grid and that looking completely fair to what he is now is superb. We're not expecting that to take the form of him inserting himself in the title battle between Bagnaia and Marquez this season. But yeah, like you say, it's not just Martin who Ducati discarded. Ducati knew by bringing Marc into the factory team, Pramac was basically off. Other riders further down the lineup would just go, actually, no, this Ducati pyramid is not a pyramid. It's just been bulldozed from the side by someone coming in from the outside. There's no point waiting here to work my way up. I'm going to go to a different factory. So Ducati basically cleared out its shop to make way for Marquez. This has to work. But I don't know why I'm sounding like skeptical there, because it's Marc Marquez. It is obviously going to work. So, yeah, interesting. In terms of how to manage the two of them, And like we said at the outset, this is not a rivalry that right now looks like it's going to be explosive. It's what happens when they actually get out on track that's going to kick things off between these two. This is how team boss Davide Tardozzi said he was going to approach managing these two.
I will not change my approach because in the end it's much more easy to work with champions than with young kids. So as soon that you know, and I already know very well Pecco while I'm starting to know Marc in those days, I think that it will be very easy. And what it support, my opinion, is the respect that they see between them. They speak a lot. They are working together to try to improve the bike, and then in the end will be the racetrack that will say who is in front and who's on the back. But this is something that who's behind will take as a stimulation to go better and be better for the following race. So I have no doubt that it will be very easy to work with them.
Okay, I'm not totally sure I buy the argument that managing two multiple world champions, one of whom has been the team for ages, the other one is the highest profile rider of the era coming in to depose your current rider. I don't get the argument that is easier than managing two people just brought up from a satellite team or Moto2 at the age of 21 or something. Simon, what do you think?
I think what Tardozzi means is specific to these two individuals. I think this is him saying, look, it's going to be easy to manage these two. These two are all right.
Yeah.
It's more that than a kind of a wider, I would rather be managing two adults like Valentino Rossi and Jorge Lorenzo than two sensible kids like Joan Mir and Alex Rins, because that is not the case. One of those pairings worked very well together as kids and the other built a wall down the garage as grown men. So I think Tardozzi has maybe meant that relative to the exact situation he has found himself in, where these two guys are... despite our friends at Dorna doing what they do and spinning a little bit of misquoted comment from Marc and Pecco into something it's not about gentlemanly conduct today, these two guys are pretty much gentlemen. They're fairly straight shooters, and I think Tardozzi is probably aware that any drama between the two of them is something that he feels he can settle in a back room by sitting the two of them down without anyone else around and kind of hashing out solutions to wherever they find themselves. There's no way that... There will be drama, there will be tension, there will be moments where they come into contact with each other and things are tense, but there won't be a long-term grudge born out of this year because of either's actions.
Let's get into the gentleman thing a little bit, because I imagine there's a few listeners there for whom their ears have perked up as to what's this about. So last year Ducati did a mini documentary about the title run-in, basically from Pecco Bagnaia and the works team's perspective. And one of the episodes was about the Thailand sprint, and it was the one where, if you'll remember, Martin went quite deep into turn one from the inside of the front row, and ended up taking himself and Bagnaia very wide, and it basically gave the sprint win to Enea Bastianini. And in that documentary, in the discussion after the video, Tardozzi is seen telling Bagnaia basically, you can't be a gentleman all the time, because these guys aren't gentlemen to you and they're kicking your ass. It's basically the exact wording that he used. So Bagnaia was asked about that comment today and the fact that Marc isn't really a gentleman on track, which I can't imagine Marc will object to that framing necessarily, because I've seen the Marc documentary and he's very proud of the fact he isn't a gentleman on track. That's how he races. Let's use our eyes here. That's fine. And Bagnaia said, well, if you won't be a gentleman, I still will be. So it's more a reassertion of his racing principles than any sort of dig at Marc or anything like that. I think that for all of Marc's particularities of on-track conduct sometimes, I cannot think of a teammate he's had issues with, necessarily. I think he has been, in public, he tends to say the right stuff. It tends to be very cordial, specifically with people who are in his team. And for Bagnaia, I think, is a universally popular teammate. Jack Miller still loves him. Jorge Martin had basically nothing but good things to say about him from their time at Moto3. I think Enea Bastianini had a pretty good experience with him. So yeah, I think that's the context there.
The fundamental thing that Marc Marquez has in his favour is that regardless of how much of a killer he is on track, he's quite a nice person off it.
Yeah.
And it's genuine. It's basic human nature. It's quite difficult to hold a grudge against someone who's not a terrible person.
Yeah,
and especially whenever you're Pecco, who's also not a terrible person at all. It's going to be hard for those two to find something that they want to fall out about badly enough to make it a massive issue.
Yeah, I can think of some people who Pecco has hung out with quite a bit who can hold a grudge against Marc Marquez. That has been proven to be possible. But
names come to mind.
Yeah,
I don't know who you're talking about, but yes,
that might have happened in the past. But it's interesting on the gentleman versus ungentleman thing. It's a fine line. I get Marquez is like he's on the bastard line when it comes to how he races. I don't think he's unfair, but if there's a chance to be a bit of a bastard, he'll be one if it's the pragmatic thing to do. Pecco did not back the field up to get Martin in trouble at Barcelona. I think Marquez would have done. Pecco hasn't maybe done the big lunges like Martin has done at times and Marquez has done at times. I don't think Pecco would do that. Pecco's not a soft touch. Pecco is not a weak racer who gets crowded and bullied, though. I think that's a complete misrepresentation of him. If anyone's thinking gentleman means soft touch, this guy's late braking is ridiculous, and that's late braking that doesn't always kind of worry too much about where the other bike is at that point as well. I don't think Pecco's unfair, but he looks after himself well. So it's not like Pecco's going to be completely walked over by Marquez, but Marquez might venture into the Shadowlands a little bit more willingly at times. Is that fair?
Yeah, and the important disclaimer is, Pecco's had his mistakes in wheel-to-wheel battle that you could attribute maybe in a different character to being overly aggressive, potentially. Again, the Viñales collision at Le Mans from a couple of years back, there's maybe, the two Marquez collisions from last year he played his part in, you could say some stuff about, but I think what really rules about Pecco Bagnaia, what I really, really enjoy about having Pecco Bagnaia as prominent in our championship as he is right now is I've grown up watching and listening to motorsport punditry go, well, you have to be a jerk to be a great. You have to be, you have to behave terribly to your rivals to be champion. You have to be ruthless. You have to not respect your rival's authority, etc. We have a guy who's won 2 world championships who clearly has a very concrete line in the sand that he will not cross, and it's a line that's quite, close to gentlemanly. The fact that he did not do last year what he could have done to Martin, I think is, commendable, and that did not stop him from winning the title in 2022 and 23, and he didn't much request team orders en route to those 2 titles. Didn't really, he has a code of conduct that he does seem to adhere to quite substantially in wheel-to-wheel battle. I think that's wonderful, and I do hope that's how it stays when Marc, who, again, this is not a Marc diss. I think if you watch the Marc documentary on what was it Amazon or was it Red Bull, it was somewhere, and it's pretty good, you will see that he has that sort of formula to him that is also the Max Verstappen formula in Formula 1. That's the thing they have in common is they really do want to be quite liked off track. That's obvious. They want everybody to be friends with them, and they want to be the life of the party, and they want to crack good jokes, and they want to have people come over and play Call of Duty with them or FIFA. But EAFC, I'm sorry, it's not FIFA anymore. Very important distinction. But on track, they want to be seen as the Terminator. They want to be seen as somebody who eliminates rivals with no regard for them and bullies them and dominates them. That pleases them as a vision, even though those are two, contradictory things. It's like some people have a distinction between how they behave offline and online, right? Offline, you're the nicest person ever. Online, you're an awful troll. This is not that kind of distinction, but it is still two maybe potentially incompatible ways to look at yourself that they manage to contain in themselves. And so do, I think, many other motorsport greats.
I like that. I love that as a theory. I was just pondering, is the fact Marquez and Bagnaia are very cordial right now, is that a sign that in the 2020s we're past the age of, but going back to the word bastard again, are we past the age of bastard in sports people? And is this why we're not in a Rossi Lorenzo situation here? Or is it purely these two and their particular characters? And the thing that made me wonder if it is actually just these two and their particular characters is thinking, what if one of these two people was Pedro Acosta? What sort of fireworks might we get at a launch if we had Acosta in one of these seats?
Imagine Acosta versus Marquez as teammates. Imagine Acosta versus Jorge Martinez teammates.
Oh, yeah.
There is so much potential for it to still happen. I think it is just it's Marc's kind of unique, I can be a complete bastard, but butter wouldn't melt my mouth approach. And then the fact that Pecco is just a bit more, I don't know what the right word to describe Pecco is compared to most MotoGP riders. He's kind of the intellectual of the grid at the minute. And I think that kind of colours how he approaches all these things. Intellectual is not a word that's commonly used to describe motorbike racers. So that, I think he stands out in that regard. This is also towards the end. This is also a grid of fairly nice kids, and maybe the one thing that has changed, whether or not we still have bastards or still will have, is that essentially they all grew up together. There's this kind of collective group of riders who all know each other and who have all known each other for a long, long time. Even, on Saturday night at the Gresini launch, I asked Alex Rins about getting to know Fermin Aldeguer's new teammate, who's like
Marquez.
12 years old.
Not Rins.
Alex Marquez,
yeah.
Who's like 12 years old or something. I don't know. With Aldeguer's a child. But Alex was saying, we've spent a lot of time together. No surprise for either of them. We've spent a lot of time together in the Clinica Mobile over the years. And we're both Spanish, and we both kind of, we've always spoken and we've always known each other. So that also makes it harder to dislike people. I think whenever you're spending so much of your time together in the paddock, which is not something that happened when there was 12 races a season.
Completely right.
When you're, always kind of on top of each other, when there's all these opportunities for crossover and people are kind of mixing, you hear the stories about the good or bad old days, depending on what way you want to look at it, of Grand Prix racing. And the paddock was little cliques, everyone had their own motorhomes that parked together. You never saw each other in between. You certainly weren't going to, dress up as Renaissance characters at a French chateau for a photo opportunity on a Thursday and laughing at each other in the process. So all of that, I think, is naturally going to take some of the sting out of the personal relationships.
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Unstoppable. Discover the inspiring true story about Anthony Robles, who defied every expectation to become a national wrestling champion in Unstoppable, a new original movie from Amazon MGM Studios and director William Goldenberg, evoking the excitement and camaraderie of classic sports dramas and thrilling wrestling matches. Unstoppable features an all-star ensemble cast, including Jarrell Jerome, Jennifer Lopez, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, and Bobby Cannavale. Watch Unstoppable now, exclusively on Amazon Prime Video.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Let's come back to this sort of vague suggestion that one of these two might not be top 3 because someone else will get involved. The suggestion Marquez sort of clarified as not really meaning it later when he spoke to the Spanish media. But they did both try to give hints that other bikes could be competitive against Ducati this season. There was obviously mentions of Aprilia having Jorge Martin now. Bagnaia was like, yeah, Yamaha's improving, which I'm sure Val was nodding along to. There was a nod to KTM's difficult financial situation, but also how fast Pedro Acosta was even in his first season. Ducati took a massive step away from the field last season, but are we thinking kind of, is there not much more headroom for gains? Is that where some of this might come from? Or is this literally just what they should have said at the launch? Are they just being polite to everybody else? Or is this genuinely a chance that actually it might be a little bit closer? Ducati might not be so dominant this year.
Well, look, it's probably not going to be as dominant, I would imagine, just because of tire continuity. And I can't pretend to know what exactly they're thinking, but I don't see why, even if it's potentially possible that one of the manufacturers is going to take a gigantic leap because they found something, I don't think either Marc or Pecco will have seen evidence of that yet, necessarily. I don't think they're basing it on anything. I think it's just being polite. When you're asked about other competitors, this is what you say.
The one thing for me that kind of stuck out was Marc's comment about he went into the 2017 season not expecting to be battling with Andrea Dovizioso for a title. And that there's an element of doubt that can always be caused because you never quite know. Yeah. I mean, maybe the Aprilia is amazing. Maybe the new Yamaha is fantastic. Maybe the V4 Yamaha arrives 3 races in and you know what, it solves all their problems. There's always going to be a certain air of uncertainty. And that's fine. That makes sense. But, I mean, that's... I think Marc is maybe overplaying the opportunity for that a little bit based on where we ended last season, where we saw things.
But that said, and this is with the caveat that we haven't heard from Gigi Dall'Igna yet. Actually, Simon, you've got a chat with him booked tomorrow after this podcast comes out, and listeners, you'll be able to see stuff from that on the website, on the YouTube channel, and on future podcasts and in the Members Club as well. But based on the fact these two have tried the 2025 bike, it's been kind of iteratively developed as well. I just don't get the feeling Ducati's expecting to take a 23 to 24 style leap with this one, is it? This is refining what dominated last year rather than kind of raising the bar out of sight again.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, Dall'Igna has basically already spoken about that in several other appearances, both in the postseason test and during what we heard of him in the launch in Italian, translated to English. So obviously something could have been potentially lost in translation, but I really don't think so. And it sounds like Ducati approached this 25 project with the understanding that there is enough margin not to take a wild swing. So there's an acceptance that some of the gap is going to be lost, but like it's budgeted in. It's how you would manage things in an ideal world. You would not use resources or gamble on trying to increase that gap because you don't need to. You can give up half of it and still be totally fine, for instance. I mean, we should not forget just how outrageously dominant the Ducati was in the second half of last season. It was ridiculous. It was quite something, wasn't it? And for that to, I think they're just playing the percentages. For that to disappear in one off season could happen, but without a rules change, I guess it could happen. But I don't know. I would not bet anything on it.
I mentioned that we'll give you the full Gigi Dall'Igna one-on-one interview in the Members Club on Patreon, which is time for the Patreon plug, which you guys, in my absence last week at the Aprilia launch, did a superb job of. Val's covering his hands. It was great. It was so great that at the very moment Val was apologising in Slack for how bad it was. Shout out to Alex Strauss, new free trial member in Patreon, who signed up at the exact moment I was listening to Val do what he felt was a shambolic plug. So, Val, it worked for Alex. It was fine. I'm going to try and live up to your plug now by mentioning that as well as Gigi in full, in the next week or so in the Members Club, we'll have Simon's behind the scenes from the first 2 launches diary. We'll have the first episode of 2015 revisited, going back to Qatar 2015. That comes out Wednesday, 22nd of January, episode 2 a week later. And we'll also have chance for you guys to put your own questions to Jack Miller, who Simon will be interviewing exclusively. We'll put some of that episode out in the main feed, but the only place to submit your questions, any place to hear the full thing, is via the Race Members Club on Patreon. Find us via the Race on Patreon or search via the-race.com/members-club. Simon?
I'd just like to say that I think if Val and I had a catchphrase whenever we're left at the podcast alone, it would probably be shambolic but effective.
Yeah, you just... thing is, like, I always kind of look at other podcast hosts in the race lineup, like what Glenn, our big boss, does on Bring Back V10s and what Ed Straw does on the F1 podcast, and go, oh yes, we're a bit rough and ready compared to that. And then you guys describe any episode they don't turn up for as uncontrolled, even by comparison to that, and it's like, yeah, I'm proud. I'm still proud of what we do. Anyway, back to the Ducati launch. Little detail, obviously, people always look for liveries at launches, and the livery is much the same, but a little detail that's really significant is that there's no Red Bull on Marc Marquez's kit for the first time ever, basically. And Simon, explain what's happened with that and how they've kind of settled it. But also, this really shows how much Marc wanted to be on this bike, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. So Marc Marquez has been a Red Bull sponsor, or has Red Bull sponsored athlete forever. literally almost, as far as his career is concerned in Grand Prix racing. Ducati team is sponsored by Monster, Red Bull's biggest and really only rival these days in terms of like global reach for this stuff. There was no way for Ducati to get out of that deal, despite the fact that they'd signed a Red Bull rider. Marc elected to not become a Monster athlete, even though, as far as I understand, there was a deal in the table. So he is now wearing the Monster logos on his leathers and on his cap, because that's branding space owned by Ducati, the team, and that's where they've been told him to put it. But on his own helmet, instead of replacing Red Bull with Monster and taking the big paycheck that would have come with it, he's given another long-term sponsor, Estrella Galicia 00, their no-alcohol version of the beer, the most prominent branding. And he's made it quite clear that the reason for that is that he will be a Red Bull athlete again as soon as either Ducati's contract expires or we go somewhere else. We expect him to be a brand ambassador for them for life. That's pretty obvious. And it's testament to them that they let him do that. It's credit to him that he values his sponsors so much. It's nice to see that Estrella gets a little bit more space. Monster are happy, and most importantly, for people like me who are a bit who see things a little bit differently, whenever we go to the French Grand Prix with their rather excessive alcohol sponsorship rules that mean there can't be any branding, we might actually get to see a MotoGP rider without a massive stupid sponsor sticker in the side of their helmet.
I think just rules that in the modern motorsport world, it's like Red Bull and Monster, or like Montague and Capulet, or however you pronounce that, from Romeo and Juliet.
I think that was correct.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. But yeah,
they're from just down the road from here.
I have bad news about what awaits them. Spoilers for a very, 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 very old book. I think it's weird. For some reason, that was like the weirdest part of today, is seeing Marc Marquez in Monster attire, right? And that's just how prevalent and pervasive and part of the brand identity these energy drink manufacturers, who have poured a lot of money into our sport, have become. It's just funny to step back and observe sometimes. And it's made me think, I don't drink a lot of Red Bull and Monster these days, but what if you like mixed the two together in one bottle or something? What would that taste like? I might have to try at some point.
Report back. I'm not going to try that, but you report back.
Try that. As soon as you finish recording, report back when it does turn you into Marc Marquez.
It sounds like the sort of horrible thing that we drank as students, except with more clear spirits involved.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. If you're looking for flexible workouts, Peloton's got you covered. Summer runs or playoff season meditations. Whatever your vibe, Peloton has thousands of classes built to push you and has something there to adapt with you, whether you need a challenge or rest. Peloton has everything you need whenever you need it. Find your push. Find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com.
Ducati was actually the second Ducati team to do its launch, because on Saturday, Simon's second trip to Italy in as many days, basically started at Imola for Gresini. A bit of a different vibe. Well, no, that's not true. Different attention level on Gresini, with Marc Marquez gone and Fermin Aldiger in alongside Alex Marquez, but vibe-wise, pretty bullish, pretty similar in terms of standard of event compared to the Marc launch last year by the look of it, wasn't it?
I mean, it'll come as no surprise whatsoever that there was no Spanish media and only one English language media in attendance at it this year, which is completely different from last year when it was a bit of a free-for-all. But, I mean, they put on a really, really impressive show. Like a really impressive show. By far the best out of everything that we've experienced so far this year. Because, yes, I know Ducati are doing bells and whistles, but if we're only focusing on the actual presentation, Gresini did just an amazing job. At the Imola circuit, it opened with a walk through this amazing audio-visual interactive corridor of Fausto Gresini's career highlights, the team's recent successes, all overlaid onto actual Fausto Gresini and Team Gresini motorbikes and trophies and leathers and helmets. Then threw into a hallway of all their movie posters from last year, into an auditorium with an amazing light show. Just really, really well done. A lot of time and effort went into producing the show that launched Gresini, maybe as opposed to the bigger launch. It felt like a team that are very comfortable in themselves, very confident in themselves, that have a lot of sponsors that they value and wanted to put on a good night for. There is no shortage of money, if that presentation is anything to go by, even in a post-Marquez world. And one of my takeaways from it was, 12 months ago, whenever we interviewed the team's commercial director, Carlo Malini, and he was telling us about how they hadn't purposely went out and got a big name title sponsor to make the most out of Marc Marquez, is because they knew that Marc Marquez was going to be a fleeting thing, and they wanted to keep loyalty with the sponsors they've had for years. That kind of felt like a tribute to the sponsors that stuck with them through all of that. And they've come out of it arguably fairly strong financially.
Yeah, I had forgotten, actually, until I was grabbing a picture of Enea Bastianini's Qatar 2022 win to go with your article about the Gresini launch, that the sponsor lineup is really stable at that team, isn't it, through what it's done the last few years. And yeah, at the time I did raise an eyebrow a little at that strategy of almost not capitalising on Marc being there, but actually, like you say, Marc's gone, Gresini's still in good shape. And it feels like they will still be in good enough shape on track. Obviously, there were very specific reasons why a year-old Ducati was not as decent a thing to have last year as it has been most other years, around the rear tyre not being the right spec for it. Okay, there's the less title-winning Marquez brother left at the team now, but Alex was talking like a man who expects to have a very good shot at winning, actually, genuinely winning some Grand Prix this year. What do you reckon of his chances and Fermin Aldiger's?
I think this has to be a really good Alex Marquez season. It has to be, in the sense that if it isn't, then I don't really know what the idea for him in MotoGP is. If this isn't the season to do it, then I don't know what that season looks like. He did, the fact that he topped the postseason test, topping kind of doesn't matter, but it is a barometer for something. And in this case, it was clearly an indication that he is ready, basically this second, to go into battle and fight for the podium. I think we speak a lot in this off-season about, the two Pramac Ducatis being gone as being good for the likes of Aprilia and KTM, right? Because it's two more Q2 slots that aren't guaranteed to be basically off the table or something of that nature. But it could be really great for Alex Marquez, because I think Alex Marquez is maybe the guy who was the most prone of just missing out on Q2 for no particularly good reason, just sort of having a rough Friday and then his whole weekend doesn't really recover from that. Because when he's good, he's real good. But when he's a little rough, he doesn't really get a great chance to recover. I think that the Pramac exit could help him have a really, really good season, I think.
The funny thing is, you said earlier in the podcast, Matt, about how the circuits at the start of the season don't really suit Marquez. And there was a little voice in the back of my brain that went, yeah, that Marquez. There's a few circuits at the start of this championship when the GP25 is still getting up to speed and the GP24 is already a sorted package that I think really suit the possibility of an Alex Marquez success. I mean, the last time we went to Termas, he was on the podium in Argentina. We go there as round 2. Imagine if it's a bit damp like it has been in Termas in the past. Alex Marquez, clear favourite to win that race. The same way as Marco Bezzecchi would have been a few months ago. Well, more than a few months ago after his disastrous 24, but you get my point. There's a couple of places early on in the season where I think Alex can really finally kind of get that cross off his back and win a few races, because I think after Zarco in 23 at Phillip Island, he must be now the guy with the most second places without a win in MotoGP. If I was looking puzzled.
Val's computer brain went into action there. But
yeah, I would really have to look that one up.
3 second places without a win, including 2 in his rookie season.
Well, definitely 3.
So no. Most other people in MotoGP without a win have not been kind of that podium. The other one might be Pedro Acosta, but yeah, he's been alien. So
thanks to the era of really competitive satellites and the madness of 2020, basically everyone's got a win now. So Alex Marquez not having one is really quite conspicuous. And like you say, if this is back to a year when a year-old Ducati is a great thing to start the season with, while the factory team figures its new kit out, then who else has got one? Franco Morbidelli, big question mark, potentially damaged goods. Fermin Aldiger, a rookie. So Alex Marquez, this is his moment to capitalise or not, basically.
I hope Alex Marquez does win, but there is absolutely a scenario in which he retires winless, and then 30 years later, with him approaching old age, the MotoGP Statistics Committee looks at these seasons and goes, you know what, sprints were races too. And then doesn't he have a sprint win? I think
he does.
So, yeah.
He does.
Welcome to the club. Yeah.
And sprints, literally, they are a race.
They are a race.
They are a race. It just is, yeah. Anyway, right, we're going to leave it there so Simon can get on gondola, hang glider, whatever tonight involves to go and have dinner with Ducati people. Our next appearance in your ears, listeners, will be going back to 2015. We're going to release a mini version of the mini pod with a bit of a teaser for you in the main feed later this week, or if you want to join us for the whole journey back through 2015 to an era when people did fall out with Marc Marquez quite comprehensively, come join us in the Race Members Club. We'll be back next week. Go on, Simon.
Sorry, I've just done a little bit of speed research, and I'm both impressed that I was correct, but also not that impressed because it isn't that impressive. Alex Marquez is the most second place finishing current MotoGP rider without a win. He's tied with Pedro Acosta, but the only other current non-rookie MotoGP rider without a win is Luca Marini, so it's not actually that impressive at all.
Wow.
And Luca has also finished second, so you know.
And it's conspicuous actually at the Ducati launch that while praising everybody and trying to come up with teams that might beat Ducatis, they didn't mention Honda, did they? Even Yamaha got more credit from these two than Honda did. So yeah,
not a lot.
Luca Marini's stat might drag on. Yes, our next launches will include Honda. We've got KTM, Yamaha, and Honda in quick succession. So we'll work out if we're bringing you one mega pod on all three of those.
And Pramac.
And Pramac, yeah. Get your questions into new Pramac signing Jack Miller. Thank you for your patience, listeners. Simon, go and get on some form of transport. We'll be back in your ears from 2015 later this week.
The Athletic.
Hello, I'm Ian McIntosh and I'm the host of the Daily Football Briefing. What is the Daily Football Briefing? It's a special 10-minute daily show designed to bring you up to speed with the most important stories from across the football world. Except on Monday mornings when it's 15 minutes and we try to cram in the results, standings and stories from the top 10 leagues on the planet. Or at least the top 10 leagues that I run on a Football Manager save. Follow this show today and you'll never miss another big story again, whether it's news that the Athletic has just broken. David Ornstein, what happened? News from outside the Premier League that other podcasts might ignore.
That is a difficult one to explain, so let's go bit by bit.
Or it's Champions League week and you just need someone to put it all into context.
It's made for a very useful away point in a difficult game in a difficult week.
Listen to the Daily Football Briefing in 2025. It's out every weekday wherever you get your podcasts.